And at that, let's see if the magic will work for me. Boomer is streaming from his amazing, yeah, okay, this looks okay. I think we are live. Okay, with an amazing 4 concurrent viewers come to celebrate, yeah, Independence Day on the channel. Oh, maybe more than 4 people. Anyway, so today we are going to do something I don't normally do, which is celebrate the amazing how Brexit has delivered everything that it promised, that we were going to be free of the European Union, that the whole rotten edifice would collapse after we left the European Union, that Sweden will leave in a Sexit and France in a Frexit, and so on and so forth, and that Britain would have wealth and riches beyond its wildest dreams. All you had to do was vote leave. Yeah, it was never going to happen. It was just impossible. There was no conceivable way this could have ever worked. None. But we'll come to that. Yeah, I support Frexit. Maybe. But you know, myself, right? So I actually live in Europe at the moment. I can first-hand tell you that it's a pain in the arse now to get anything from England. It used to be absolutely seamless. You could order from Amazon, eBay. I have scientific suppliers who I would order from in the UK. Now it's just way too much of a pain in the arse. There is probably a sort of coin flipping chance that you have to fill out paperwork to do it, and that's just a killer. Yeah, I'll buy it from elsewhere. The business is gone, and I hear similar stories going in the other direction. And yeah, this maybe cuts to the heart of it, that if you take a look at what the European Union mostly gave to the UK, it was a trade deal. Ah, fucking trade deal, which means that leaving it was essentially imposing sanctions on yourself. The you know, England became almost all Great Britain or the United Kingdom. I don't care. People will have fun with that in the comments, but I don't care. I've not lived in England for the best part of 20 years now, so for me, it's almost like I remember what it was like when I was a kid there. In fact, let me tell you what it was like as a kid growing up in England. And I have some clips queued up. So there was this TV show called Auf Wiedersehen Pet, which is German. It means goodbye. And pet is like northern speak for babe, honey, that sort of, my love. It's a sort of diminutive, cute name of someone you like. So, bye, pet. Anyway, so if I pulled some of them up, they go back to the 80s. All right, so this is a long time ago, and England was it was a pretty grim place in the 80s, right? The 70s had been an absolute disaster, and in the 70s, England had been trying really hard to get into the European Union, only to get repeatedly screwed over by the French, who didn't want the British coming in for historic grudges. I think it was Charles de Gaulle who like blocked Britain's admission several times. Ironically, for sort of similar reasons to why we left in the end. Anyway, I need my clips. Let's see if we can get some clips to work. I'm not good at streaming, so you'll have to bear with me for a second. Right, we want to pull up Vegas. There we go. All right, so Vida Same Pet was basically everything was dirt poor in England, and it was about some builders who went to Germany to basically for jobs. There were no jobs in England. So this is 25 years before Brexit. 25 years, right? So you'll hear some of the sound bites from Brexit actually in this clip before the word even existed, when we'd barely had a chance to really get into the European Union. Let me just check that my sound levels are not too crazy on this. Okay, let's see if this works.
Used all my options, worked off my dues, played all the cards, now there's nothing to lose.
Just remember, man, they need us more than we need them.
Oh, we don't need them, do we not, eh? Why are we here then?
I want tomorrow to be like today. That's why I'm breaking away.
Come on, you're complaining about the conditions. You can't stand the Germans, so why are you here, Oz?
Makes a change.
Makes a change, aye. Makes a change from the dole queue, doesn't it?
What good do you think that's good?
Just so you know, the dole queue is basically when you're unemployed in England. Yeah, that was the sort of state benefit to stop you from starving, was the dole. It was a miserable place to be in what was at the time a miserable country. So, you know, going and working in Germany was better than the dole.
Gonna do?
Well, it's gonna leave him short, isn't it? Then what's he gonna do?
He's gonna ring the agent and order another 6 Brits. You've got plenty to choose from. There's 3 million unemployed back up. Look, if you want workers' rights, then register with the Germans. Pay them income tax, welfare and insurance. You can't have it both ways. And become ridiculously nationalistic for the country that can't even bloody employ them in the first place, man.
So yeah, this just gives you a real flavour of what it was like when I was growing up. And, yeah, so the 70s were super rough, but I don't remember those. The 80s were getting better. The 90s was sort of boomtowny type. Everything was much more, well, not all of it, but and yeah, then we get on to the latest set of Conservatives, which have been just a disaster.
Tomorrow be like today. That's why I'm breaking away.
Look, man, we're here because we can't get work in England. You should be grateful to the Germans. It's thanks to them you've got money in your pocket. And the dignity of knowing you've just earned it.
Yeah, so it was a hugely popular show at the time about, yeah, basically poor British people going and working in Germany because they had jobs there and good paying jobs, blah, blah, blah. It was basically what happened in England in post-2000. There was this sort of meme that the plumbers would come over from Poland because the wages were better. So it was exactly a sort of role reversal, and it looks like we might have that role reversal again. If you take the current growth rates in Europe, Poland will be better paid. You know, your average Pole will be better paid than your average Brit by the end of the decade. So, and this is partly because of the UK absolutely shooting itself in the foot with Brexit. Now, you know, if you took a look at the coarse grain numbers, let's remind ourselves of what Brexit is. The undefined being negotiated by the unprepared in order to get the unspecified for the uninformed. That's exactly what it was. It was never defined beforehand. It was just, do you want to vote for it or not? And then came 2 years of haggling over what the hell people had actually... I mean, it's ridiculous if you think about it, that you had people arguing about what they'd voted for after the referendum. Yeah, isn't the normal way to do this to put forward a road plan, then vote on the road plan? But no, there was none of that. So there was all these tiers of what could have happened. You know, there could have been you know, Britain stayed in the common market, which would have been basically Brexit in name only. because that's basically what the European Union is. It's a sort of common market with some extra little regulations on top. Anyway, I was about to go and let's go for Jorang and kill that one, and kill that one. Okay, so yeah, coarse grain numbers. This is the UK economy, thereabouts, expertly drawn. I want to be back on here. Put me back. Too many monitors. There we go. That's the British economy. Roughly 1/3 of the economy is exports of one sort or another. So it's about 30%. Of that, roughly 15% goes to the European Union. And this is down by some significant amount. And overall, in terms of what it's shaved off the British economy, it's a few percent. So the British economy is, it's down a few percent, like 4% or something, which doesn't sound like much until you actually start thinking about the big numbers, which is what the hell is most of this 70% down here? Well, most countries mostly employ themselves looking after themselves. This is sort of growing your food, educating your kids, building the roads, running the hospitals, all that sort of things. A lot of service sector stuff in here. And all of a sudden, you've got a 5% hole in the budget for paying for all of that. So you've now got a couple of choices. You can either raise taxes by about 5%, that kind of sucks, or you can pay all of these people less. Also not good, which, this is sort of the situation that the UK finds itself in now. And it is essentially duped into... it was a scapegoat, right? The European Union was a scapegoat. All you had to do was vote for Brexit and everything would be better because all of your problems were due to the European Union. The mere fact that it just wasn't true. It was a scapegoat. And this is maybe in nowhere seen better as with the immigration figures. So before Brexit, there was this big thing that when we take back control of our borders, we'll be able to stop immigration. And it turns out that, since Brexit, the immigration numbers have exploded. They're the highest they've ever been now. So it was never the European Union, evidently. But even when they were saying it back then, it just wasn't true. Britain had control of its own borders all along. It was just a good catchphrase, take back control. And likewise, this whole thing about there was a bus which had £350 million a week. Now, let me see if I can find that for you. There's this Brexit battle bus that they drove around saying that we send £350 million a week to the European Union. Why don't we take back control and give that money to the National Health Service instead? The National Health Service is a much beloved and sort of fairly underfunded institution in England. It's basically national healthcare. So, saying that you were going to give money to the National Health Service, this was going to always play well. But again, it was complete and utter bullshit. As can probably be best summed up. So it's roughly £350 million a week is what they were sending to Europe, and the rough damage to the British economy is about 10 times that amount, roughly. So it's been devastating. You have to find there's £1 billion of black hole in the British economy at the moment, and you've got to pay for it somehow, either borrowing or putting up taxes or cutting wages. And when I was last back in England, rail strikes, which were, last time I heard, still going on, which is... Phil was a Remainer. Damn straight he was, because it was... Like, the European Union was mostly a trading bloc. And it's something that you didn't really appreciate until it's gone. And like I was saying, me personally, I've seen this firsthand, that it's just too much of a pain in the ass to trade with England anymore. So, yeah, you just don't do it. And if you take a look at all these clips going back from people like Farage and the such like, it's like, they're basically saying, we're going to build our own European Union with blackjack and hookers and no bureaucratic oversight, which is just never going to happen. If you're going to have trade agreements, you need ways of enforcing them, and there needs to be ways of resolving disputes, and this is overwhelmingly what the European Union does. And yeah, ballpark figures, once again, right? Just the civil servants in England are about, I forget what it is actually, it's some crazy amount, but the entire civil servants for the European Union is 1/10 the size, so it's 50,000. 50,000 is all of the European Union civil servants, all of them. UK alone has 500,000 civil servants, but of course, you know, that's because these just deal with the trading arrangements. That's basically all they do. And I was coming back to this debate that I had with Sargon of Akkad, which, oh boy, let's just say it's not aged well for him, in that if you actually take, his basic beef is that because the European Union make rules, that means they're going to turn into a fascist dictatorship. And it's like, well, yeah, all governments make rules, but they don't all turn into fascist dictatorships. And indeed, you could even just go for the empirical thing of what have you observed. And what you've observed over the last 7 years is there has basically been no change in the European Union. In fact, if anything, it's... hang on, someone says I should take a poll right now of whether people support Brexit or not. Okay, let's try that. I should do a video about... sorry, I'm a boomer when it comes to this sort of thing. I'm going to try and do a poll. Because the poll thing, yeah, Sargon of Applebee's, that's exactly right. And he also... So he got so toxic that Farage actually completely turned his back on him. Like, you know, no, these are vile, disgusting people. I want nothing to do with them. They should never have been allowed in the party. Yeah, it was an interesting time 7 years ago. Anyway, right, can you do a video talking about SMR? Oh, modular reactors. No, they're a waste of time. The small modular nuclear reactors, they're a solution to nothing. They're you should first sign that they're a complete dead loss is when the British government was grasping at straws, saying it'll solve all of our power problems. No, it won't. And they have all the problems of other reactors. And thank you, Queen Tiki. Anyway, someone said I should do a poll. What poll should I do? How do I do a poll even? I do so few of these things. Oh my god. No, boomer attack. Okay, maybe I'll come back to trying to do a poll later. But yeah, so this idea that the European Union was going to become this fascist dictator state, in fact, it's something that I've noticed, right? This is, if I'm going to send out any message at all tonight, let it be this. The more you listen to someone and the more you hear the word they, the more they're full of shit. Because they is usually almost universally portraying a group as some collective that is acting with Machiavellian certainty and complete lockstep discipline, and it exists nowhere in the world, right? So when I was going back and listening to this debate between me and Sargon, it was always they want this, they want that. That they are, crypto fascists who are looking to oppress the bourgeois, blah blah blah. But it's always they, and obviously it's not a sort of single off thing. But the more people use the word they, the more the red flags should be going off, and it's universal with all the conspiracy theories that. When you assume that your the group that you disagree with are acting as some massive coherent group, competence and acting in large groups together is not the order of mankind. The order of mankind is Brexit. It's a clusterfuck that just staggers from one cock up to the next. If you're looking for an explanation, don't look for a coherent, deep state. I mean, it's like, how the hell are all these people acting together? You don't look for a solution like that. You look for what is the most incompetent explanation that I can come up with for what they've done here, and how can it be even worse? With maybe, again, coming back to Sargon and his running for... What did he run for? It was UKIP, wasn't it? I mean, he became a politician for UKIP and ran on the platform of rape jokes should be fine. And it's like, that might work well with the edgelords on YouTube, but you try that with the average person and you will get the exact reaction that you got from Farage, which is, we want nothing to do with these people. They're nothing to do with us. Yeah, so... yeah, let's go see if I can find some clips. So we will come back to... Right, so this one's a bit of fun. This is Farage, I think, leaving the European Union.
After 3.5...
is that going to work? Hang on, sorry. Yeah, okay, we're good to go.
After 3.5 years of deception and dishonesty, we will be leaving this prison of nations at the end of January.
Prison of nations. Really? So the irony is that Britain was actually better off in a prison than... They were better off in the prison than out of it.
And we won't become a third country, as I've been hearing this morning.
That's exactly what Britain became. They became a third country, which basically means you don't have any trading agreements with them. That's exactly what Britain became.
No, we're going to become an independent, self-governing nation. And you can delude yourselves this morning inside this cathedral that all is well, but it isn't. It isn't. People do not want to be run and governed by faceless bureaucrats like...
We are almost entirely governed by, especially in England. In England, we have politicians who do the whole getting elected thing, and then we have faceless bureaucrats who draft all the laws, which is their interpretation of what the politicians want. Yeah, so basically, we are run by faceless bureaucrats in England, in Great Britain.
Michelle and von der Leyen. Did you hear them earlier? Dull as ditch water. You're being rejected.
And honestly, give me dullest dishwater and competent every day over what we're getting at the moment.
And it's great news that in Poland, opinion polls now show a majority of Poles think they'd be better off outside the European Union. Brexit is the beginning of the end of this project.
By the way, I checked the numbers on Poland. Something like they have an 80% approval now of the European Union. Brexit has been a marvellous example, right? So he's about to say that it's going to crumble, I think.
We are giving leadership, and we'll take it to a Europe of sovereign states working together, being friends together, but not being run by the gang down at the middle there.
Which is basically, we're going to get rid of this giant trading bloc, which allows frictionless trade and movement of labour around this giant market, which is bloody fantastic for all the economies. And we're going to replace it with exactly the same thing, but without any of the bureaucracy, which basically means, I mean, it's delusional. You need, you know, if you're going to have rules, you need ways of enforcing them. Anyway.
It's not a great way to make friends if you describe them as dull as ditch water. A little bit of respect for members of.
I mean, but let's be real. They were basically trolls. Fairly successful trolls, it must be said. In fact, this is one of the other things that I've learned to lament over the years when it comes to things like Brexit, or a load of other things like it, is being right isn't as an important commodity as you would like it to be. You know, you take a look at a load of the political commentators and how often they are cataclysmically wrong. You know, they're not just wrong, but they're wrong for the wrong reasons. Tim Pool is one of the ones who springs to mind. And let me be straight. He is loads more popular than me. Crowder is another one. In fact, Crowder, I remember when... Yeah, stick to science, Phil. Yeah, because leaving... I think that was in sarcasm, but... yeah, Stephen Crowder was another one. So I remember Stephen Crowder when he... This is going back a long, long way. When he was the sidekick of some libertarian on YouTube called How the World Works, who was some sort of, you know, young whelp of a libertarian, and Crowder was his unfunny friend who, you know, became very popular. And I'm not entirely sure why it happens, but on YouTube, I can tell you a lot of what it is you have to pump out the media, which is where I will always get screwed over. For two reasons. First of all, I do a lot of fact-checking and calculations and put a lot of effort into getting things right, which doesn't actually correlate terribly well with what gets popular on YouTube, which is people who basically just pump out lots of sort of generic content. And yeah, I never really had the... That for me would be a loss. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror if I just became that. I enjoy the science. I enjoy understanding things. I enjoy sort of communicating those things. And if it just becomes the name of the game, is the only way to make it on YouTube is to put out lots of content. I love making the content, but so I actually had one of these meetings with one of these guys from YouTube, and that was basically his advice. You know, can't you make like 2 or 3 times as many videos? And it's like, are you shitting me? You know how much that last video that I put out about the aliens has like, well, not 1,000 cuts in it, but it's some bloody stupid number. Not even so sure I can pull it up, but yeah, you can't put out an infinite amount of content like that. You've got to go through it and sort of sift it all. Anyway, let's take another look at some other clips. I mean, this one, it looks is, yeah.
But you know, Thunderfoot, even if...
No. I'm just want to know. I mean,
So this is after the Brexit vote, where there comes a point when you've tried your best to argue with people, and they're turkeys voting for Christmas, they're idiots voting to boil their feet, and you just have to let them do it. You can't reason people out of a position they didn't reason themselves into to begin with.
congratulations, you won, but at what cost? The first one is you've got a divided country. Okay, let's see who's salty. Is the country more united or less now?
Yeah,
That's the next thing to do, isn't it?
What, you think that you're going to unite the country now?
Well, no, but the Remain camp are going to have to reconcile things, aren't they?
After.
Yeah, at which point it's just delusional. The idea that, well, we won the vote, therefore the unspecified that we voted for, everyone will just have to accept. I mean, it was dumb on multiple reasons. In fact, at this point, I'm going to come back to my little blackboard. I need to draw more stuff for you to tell you why Brexit was just incredibly stupid. Right, so you might have seen, in fact, let me see if I can pull it up. Yeah, here we go. Boom, there we go. So, what you're looking at there is, with hindsight, do you think Brexit was right or wrong? And it sort of catastrophically started sliding. By the way, this is a one-way slide. This is never coming back, and it's never coming back for multiple reasons. About half of this was baked in. It was guaranteed to be like this because it turns out that when you broke down the Brexit vote by age category, most of the young people voted to not do stupid stuff for their future. Most of the old people, we want to take back control. So all the old people voted to leave, all the young people voted to stay, which meant that as the old people die, and a significant people of these people will have died in the 7 years since the vote, it turns about half of this, you actually do the calculations, roughly half of the lack of popularity of Brexit is just due to old people dying. Old people who wanted to leave die. And when you come to... this is where it becomes an interesting... I need my drawing up. There we go. When you come to... and I want me back up here. Oh, too many screens. Sorry, boom a moment. There we go. Right. So, you know that there are young people who want in. And you know that there are old people who want out. And yeah, when you vote, they're roughly 50-50. You know that by the time you implement it in 5 years' time, that it will look more like this. You know there is a baked-in unpopularity for what you are going to implement on a generation that doesn't want it. And this is an interesting question for democracy. You know, can you vote something like this for the next generation? But it turns out it's even worse than that, because it's not just old people dying that has made Brexit unpopular. It turns out the fact that it was a stupid idea is starting to dawn on people, and it's dawning on people in all sorts of ways. That first of all, it's harder to go to Europe. It's harder for people to come to England. So you know, you used to get tourist trips with kids, and you know, school trips would go to England. And of course, it was dead easy. You didn't need any passports or anything like that. You just go to England, fine, no problem. Now, of course, you need to do all paperwork and all sorts of shit, and it's just too much of a pain in the ass. The bottom line is school trips, where they used to want to go to England because speaking English is a useful skill to have in the wide world. Now it's just too much of a pain in the ass, so they don't do it. And ironically, Britain, like most first world countries, is starting to run into a sort of population crisis where basically you don't have your economy. You need lots of young people to work to keep society running for everyone else. And if you don't have enough young people, the economy starts to rot away. And this is a problem they now have in the UK, is that they used to have nurses from the EU, and now they've gone home or they're not interested in staying. And there used to be all sorts of seasonal workers who would come over and help pick the crops and all that sort of thing. They're not coming anymore. And you add this on top of Brexit has basically politically crippled England for the best part of half a decade. Half a decade when these politicians. I wouldn't even suggest that these politicians should really be running anything, but they could have been doing something useful, and instead they were just arguing all throughout about Brexit. I get a super chat saying, just want to say thank you. Been watching since the Venom Fang X days. That's going back a long way. That's like over a decade now. In fact, actually, whilst we're talking about sort of enemies of this channel past, I checked out Anita Sarkeesian the other day, right? So this is the sort of the flip side of what you've got to do on YouTube is just to pump out lots of crap and hope it finds an audience. She's the exact opposite now of that. She pumps out loads of crap and no one even bats an eyelid. And so it turns out her videos now pull in typically less than 1,000. It's about 1,000 hits per video, which is not so good. But then she still does this sort of annual report thing, saying they're a charity organization, and she still pulls in about $500,000 per year, which is like, actually, for doing a podcast that no one watches, I forget whether it's once a week or once a month or something. But I mean, for me, the reason I mostly lost interest in people like Sarkeesian is, when I was doing stuff on her, she was actually at the United Nations, right? People were taking her seriously. People were paying lip service to her. She was on the Colbert Report. This kind of made sense. When she makes videos with 1,000 views about her opinions on whatever the latest Netflix series, who cares? So the only way to celebrate Freedom Day is with some beer. So let's see what else we have in. I did actually make some notes. Yes. Yeah. So this is, I often wonder whether this would be, again, going back to people like Sargon. If you actually list the things that they got wrong, it's basically, in fact, let me see if I can find a clip for you. There's throughout this debate I had with him, he's saying that Brexit will make wages go up, it'll increase the availability of food, and it'll increase employment. Absolutely 100% cataclysmically wrong on all of these. And let me see if I can find that clip. There are lots of clips, by the way. And for those who watched the little teaser, the bit where Farage says he's like the lead guy in Brexit, the point where he says it failed is because he says that the British politicians were as useless as the ones in Brussels. There is the unironical thing that He's a politician, right? He talks about they like they're a different sort of cut from a different cloth. No, he's talking about himself. He's bloody useless. And there was this thing where someone asked him, why didn't you have a road plan for Brexit? And it's, well, I didn't want to distract people with unnecessary detail, like what they were actually voting for. Yeah, Sargon was wrong, no way. Someone said something about... well, this is the thing. As far as I can tell, he's actually sort of reinvented himself fairly well. Not as Sargon of Akkad, but let me see if I can pull up some of these classic clips from a while back.
This is my point, though. This whole thing has been done...
Hang on, I don't think you're on. I need to give the video to you. There we go. Super. So this is me, a degree hairier, a lot younger. This is the thing. Once you've been on YouTube for this long, it's almost generational. Anyway, let's see what Sargon's got for us.
This is my point, though. This whole thing has been done ideologically. You know, they've been like, oh, we want to prevent war in Europe. We should have a united Europe. And it's like, okay, but they're asking people. No, but they're asking people to give up their sovereignty in the long term. That's the goal.
What sovereignty?
Okay,
come on.
what
sovereignty? No, I want to know what sovereignty have you given up for the EU?
Okay, 50% of the laws are made by people I didn't elect.
Bullshit. Right, name one of them.
Well, just because I can't name one doesn't mean it's not true.
Oh, come on, for fuck's sake.
No, but this is what they say. They say
the EU is imposing all their horrible burdens on me.
The European Commission's
I have to have
website.
a flame retardant label on my chair.
Yeah,
right? If that is the imposition, if that is the freedom that you've given up, it's bullshit.
Look, that is the very beginning. I mean, look, listen, right?
Yeah, right.
Listen to this, right? On April 24th,
Yeah, I mean, that's where you sort of pull your hair out of this sort of thing, that you can't name a single... You claim there's some sort of draconian, creeping fascism, and they're horrible in they're opposing all of these laws on you, but you can't name one of them? It's like, what? Seriously? Actually, there's one part in this where I think I predict the Ukrainian war, but I'm not sure I can find it.
Something.
No, but that's the reason.
This is actually securing the food supply. Is if you've known hunger, it's something that you might want to do.
Yeah, I agree with you, but we're not in that position, and we're not going to be in that.
So this was the origin of the Common Agricultural Policy, which was something the European Union did early on, because at the end of World War II, there had actually been starvation in Europe, so they basically wanted to secure the food supply. Turned out to be bureaucratic, blah, blah, blah. Tony Blair was instrumental in sort of getting it cut way back. But, there were sensible reasons for this.
That position. I think that's an who is going to invade Europe? I mean, who would do it?
Well, yeah, but this is we have instability on the borders, but they're a long way away. And if you're in Eastern Europe, Ukraine's not that far off.
What, from being invaded or invaded?
What do you mean? There's already been they've been shooting in it.
Yeah, I know. .net. I know. But what?
There you go. Right. So that was 7 years ago. There was still the sparks of the thing kicking off in Donetsk, and the discussion was, well, who could possibly invade Europe? And fortunately, it turns out that great foreshadowing. It turns out that Russia has kind of shown to the world that they're not a credible military power anymore, in the mere fact that we're talking about the words Ukrainian offensive. I mean, honestly, I've not seen anything. There's not really been anything where you've seen the Ukrainians sort of breaking through or doing anything like this. But the mere fact that a former superpower is talking about a Ukrainian offensive and that they've stopped it and blah, blah, blah. The mere fact that they're talking about it basically shows how far down Russia has come since then.
Wiki,
see what else we got.
Wiki, there we go. Economic growth in the EU. This is the other thing. Are you talking 1 year or 5 years or 10 years or something?
I think it was just last year's growth I was talking about.
Right, so Germany is at 4.6 for the... Hang on. Oh, no, that's unemployed. What are we at for? GDP...
I mean, and that's another thing as well. The unemployment across Europe is staggering.
There we go. The unemployment across Europe is staggering. I mean, it's 4.5% in Germany. Guess how this is going to go?
Absolutely
staggering. I wouldn't go for
staggering. That is just going to encourage poor people from Europe to come to Britain.
So, what do you think it is in the United Kingdom?
The stats I saw the other day were 2.9%.
For United Kingdom on unemployment?
Oh, no, growth, sorry. It's 1.3 million, so I do whatever that is in population.
It says here 5.3%, which is actually higher than Germany.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, really.
So you said that, we send, you actually had the number in it, that we send £100 to the...
Right, this is one of the ones that absolutely blows my mind. Right, remember what I was saying earlier about being wrong doesn't seem to affect how, it's more about how people feel about their celebrity figures than whether they're right or not. I mean, I just can't imagine doing what Sargon's about to claim that he's done here, okay?
Then you actually had the number in it, that we sent £100 to the EU, and if we left, you thought we would be £1,000 richer.
Well, no, I don't think that. That's just what the source I was quoting.
Right, so this is... He just blows it off like, well, yeah, but that's what someone said. And it's like, no, that's a really stupid number that you must have known was stupid, but you still reported this, saying that this was a really good reason to leave the European Union because we would be much richer out of it.
Come on, I don't care where that comes from. You've got to know.
The average person will have more money. The average person will have more money. They absolutely will.
So you think that every pound...
There we go. The average person will have more money. It's not what happened.
That you don't send to Europe, you're going to get £10 richer.
No, I don't think it's going to be
that's what
drastic.
Your numbers were.
No,
you said,
I'll have to find it.
We send £100 to Europe, and if we leave, we'll be £1,000 richer.
Okay, let's assume those numbers are vastly inflated then, right?
Vastly inflated.
Let's assume they are. Let's assume they are, right?
10% difference, I would maybe say, maybe.
Let's assume that there is no difference.
1,000% better off for leaving.
Okay, but let's assume those numbers are wrong then, right? But there is no doubt that the average...
Let's assume they're wrong. I mean, how could you believe them?
Well, I don't know. This is the thing. I'm just going off what is shown. I mean, we're certainly not going to...
It's just like, well, yeah, someone said numbers and I reported them. So the fact that they were absolute garbage, right? Impossibly stupid garbage. And what? You expect me to take responsibility for any of this?
Can be £4,200 worse off.
Yeah, right. Well, actually...
No, we know we're not. We know we're not. Even The Guardian were debunking that.
Ballpark figures, I think it's roughly the numbers are... the average Brit used to send about £100 per year to the European Union. And in terms of what they got back in terms of the economy, it was worth 5 times that. And... sorry, that's basically what it's cost them, right? So, yeah, so it almost, just from what the damage it's done to the economy, Brits are about £500 per year poorer. And this is before you go into the details that you have what your system is before and what your system is after. And if they're more or less the same, then there's no real savings to be done by changing. But there's a gargantuan cost from changing from one system to the other system. And to get a feel for the size of that system, that was basically 7 years of bureaucracy of running the Brexit system to transition from something to something that is actually slightly worse. And the rough bill for that was, I think, larger than all of the British, all of the, whatever the membership costs that Britain had ever paid to the European Union. That was more or less the cost of Brexit. And that's not even taking into account that the whole thing was sold on, well, we'll actually be better off once we leave. No, Britain's worse off now, and it has the gargantuan bill from transitioning from something to something that is slightly worse.
This is the thing. It's most likely to be a wash for the simple reason that you're still the same country that you were. Yada yada yada. You're off the coast. It does. If you actually put up barriers, they'll be reciprocated. It's likely that you won't get any more favourable treatment than you've got at the moment because everyone.
So this is basically the best case scenario. Is it's the same. But, of course, you do then have to pay for 7 years of bureaucratic things where you basically, all of the rules and regulations that used to be part of the European Union, like, no lead chips in children's paint, that sort of thing, they now have to be transferred to British rules. And that's all it basically was. It was just a copy-paste. So there has been operationally no change, and it's had this gargantuan bill tied to it. And Britain is now worse off by I think it's roughly £500 per person worse off after Brexit, whereas before you would just pay £100 per year. So you're a lot worse off because of Brexit. Anyway.
If you want to export, that you've got to accept the imports.
Yeah, but I mean, people in the Leave campaign have literally been saying that wages will go up and prices for food will go down.
Boom! Wages will go up, prices for food will go down. Can we have a soundbite, please?
People in the Leave campaign have literally been saying that wages will go up and prices for food will go down.
Oh, hang on, sorry, hang on. I'm
but
sorry.
I mean, people in the Leave campaign have literally been saying that wages will go.
I'm sorry, I have to do this.
That wages will go up and prices for food will go down. That wages will go up and prices for food will go up and prices for food will go down. That wages will go up and prices for food will go down. That wages will go up and prices for food will go down.
Exactly the opposite of what happened. Prices for food went up like crazy because obviously, you have to now import them through trade barriers, and with fresh food, that's a pain in the ass. They're all the people who the fisheries got royally screwed over by Brexit, in that they're on the same deal, that you've got to export these things quickly, right? Because the shellfish go bad quick. And now they have a giant stacks of paperwork to basically export the shellfish to the European Union. And also, I mean, the irony that, we must take back control of our own waters. It turns out the fish in British waters, the British don't really like to eat. And, so most of our fish was sort of caught in Norway waters, that sort of thing. So, it's just so stupid. Anyway, we got a couple of super chats coming. I heard Elon May threw his hat. Oh yeah, May threw his hat in the ring and promises to fix Brexit by 2021. Yeah, Musk has said he is going to fight. Not Bezos, the other one. The Microsoft guy. Not the Microsoft. The Facebook. Zuckerberg. He said he's going to fight Zuckerberg, and he's going to get absolutely killed if he does. Because Musk is, first of all, old. Almost as old as me. In fact, me and Musk are almost exactly the same age. And thank you for the compliment about the hair. But Musk is also fat and unhealthy. And Zuckerberg looks like he's enjoying being a billionaire, even though he's completely trashed the value of Facebook The thing is, Zuckerberg probably can't go bankrupt. Musk can. Musk can go bankrupt spectacularly. Because he's got all sorts of commitments on billions of dollars of stuff, and all it really takes is SpaceX is probably dead. The only way it's going to continue if it's continually subsidized, which it almost certainly will be, because it's needed as a strategic asset for America. It's the only way America can currently launch astronauts into space. So the SpaceX as a company will exist in some way, shape, or form, but Musk might not be anywhere near it. Anyway, so it will be interesting to see if Musk's going to back out of the ring fight. Calling it now, absolutely 100%. There is zero chance. This is my chance to show that I am wrong about something, but no, I'm not. Musk will never get into the ring with Zuckerberg because he's a fat bullshit merchant, and fat bullshit merchants don't do so well in MMA fights. So I've heard. Anyway, right. Let's see what else we got in the way of clips here. Let's take that off loops. Actually, no. Let's play it one more time. Yeah.
The wages will go up and prices for food will go down. The wages will go up and prices for food will go down. The wages will go up and prices for food.
Sorry, it's aged well, right?
This is my point though. This whole thing has been done ideologically. They've been like, we want to prevent war in Europe. We should have a united Europe. And it's like, okay, but they're asking people to give up their sovereignty. In the long term, that's the goal.
What sovereignty?
Okay,
come on.
I think we've had this one, yeah.
No, I want to know what
where you can't name a single rule that is imposing on your sovereignty.
And it is likely that more laws will come from a closely more integrated, federated Europe. And we didn't elect the people writing those laws.
These are criticisms you could have just as easily made against the UK government.
Yes, and we can make them if you like. But the point at hand is
at which point it's like, these are just generic criticisms of democracy. I don't like the way that the rules are written and signed into law. Well, but it's a democracy. They all have legion flaws. As Churchill once said, democracy is the worst form of government. It's just better than anything else that's ever been invented.
The Brexit. I mean, once we're out, hell, we can send politicians to the Parliament to make laws to do exactly those things. I'd probably support them, to be honest. But at the moment, we need to be able to know that in the future we have the ability to get politicians to do this. And if we join the Federated States of Europe, we know we can't.
No, you know that you have a voting criticism that you're making about Europe. You could make about your own.
Okay, but
government.
that's just too cocky. That doesn't mean that.
That means it's true, right? I mean, just saying that tu quoque is a logical fallacy. By the way, I despise people who argue via logical fallacies because they're almost always bullshit. If you can demonstrate that what someone is saying is wrong, you do it. You don't sort of generalize it to a fallacy and then sort of smugly declare that you made a logical fallacy. Point in question, I've got this strange lump on my neck. Maybe I should go see a doctor. And they pipe up, that's just an appeal to authority fallacy. Just because he's a doctor, you assume he's going to be right. And it's, well, actually... in the real world, the way it works is we don't deal with absolute rights and wrongs. We deal with statistical probabilities. And if you're going to trust, someone's diagnosed a lump on your neck, it might be best to get a medical professional to do it. And just saying that this is a appeal to authority fallacy is not terribly useful. Anyway.
It's not true about Europe. It means it's also true about Europe.
Right, so are you saying that you actually have a problem with democracy in the UK?
I'm saying that democracy in the UK is not perfect, but it is better than democracy in Europe.
It's not perfect and...
Well, yeah, I mean, if you've seen the absolute shit show of what happened, of the UK running Brexit for the last 7 years, it's below par. right? So let me give you a little history here on why Brexit happened in the first place, because it is a something of errors. Sorry, the beer is starting to kick home. And there were two parties. There were the Conservatives, and it looks like they were going to lose. And because they thought they were going to lose, they decided they were going to court the crazy Brexit vote people and say, if you vote for us, we'll give you a referendum. Because they expected to lose, and if they lose, they would have to form a coalition government, and the coalition partners would veto the Brexit vote. Unfortunately, that's not how it went, and they actually won a majority. So they went ahead with a referendum because no one could veto it, but that was fine because no one was crazy enough to do this. And then, of course, Brexit won, and everyone almost immediately backed away from the project, and it was crazy that, you know, you had Boris Johnson from one day sort of giving this great Independence Day speech to the very next day looking like an absolutely broken man. You know, there's basically just drilled a hole in the bottom of the ship. And after that, the Prime Minister resigned, and they got Liz Truss, who was an absolute didn't go well. And then, oh my God, we had the woman who was Prime Minister for like I might be getting these confused. Yeah, we had the May not trust. Right, there we go. Thank you very much, chat. Thank you very much. Right, so originally it was Theresa May. She was a disaster. Then we had Liz Truss, who was beyond disastrous. Sorry, we had Boris Johnson as well in the middle. But Truss was like, okay, we'll solve all of our problems by giving massive tax cuts for the rich, and we'll borrow money and hope that the economy gets better due to our tax cuts. And this was sort of... it was literally betting your whole economy on the roll of a dice. And a roll of the dice where the expectation is that you would lose by a long way. And that's what sort of crashed the... add some captions next time. I probably should do. Yeah, so that sort of crashed the economy and wiped 10% off the pound overnight. And, you know, they promised that she would never step down, and the very next day she stepped down. And yeah, British politics, they've barely got through Brexit, and there's just a giant hole to dig themselves out of now. Anyway, let's take a look at some more clips.
Well, there's not really much you can do.
Of course there is.
The only thing that you can do is you can vote for a local an MP. That's
Exactly.
your only
This is
say.
dull.
And that's all I
want a
need.
bit about aircraft carriers. There was this one bit where I talked to him about aircraft carriers.
No,
It's
but that's
you know,
the
this is
reason.
actually securing the food supply, fuses and that sort of thing.
Yeah, but what this then becomes is an argument about taxation without representation. You know,
Boom.
because we pay them money, and I can't vote for them. I can only vote for their dog's body MEPs. They
Right.
can't propose the laws. Therefore, if I wanted to get a law sorted, and millions of other people wanted to get a law put into place, say a law to say, I don't know, audit the EU and, you know, try and cut down some of the waste.
There's the taxation
we
without
can't,
representation.
yeah, but we can't make them do that. The only way we're going to be doing that is under rioting in the streets or something. There's no democratic method for us to force the EU to reform.
You could say the same thing about the monarchy, but whatever.
How much?
Or not the
tax
monarchy, just British Parliament. Anyway, let's hear about the aircraft carriers, because the aircraft carriers is funny.
do you pay to the European Union? It's a fraction of your total tax.
Oh, I don't know. I'd have to calculate it.
Your typical Brit earns about £30,000, euros, dollars, doesn't really matter what. About 1/3 of that goes in tax. that's about £10,000, of which about 1/5, 2,000 or something, goes to the NHS. Guess how much goes to the European Union?
Probably not all that much, no.
About £100. About 1% of your tax goes to the European Union.
So some of my tax goes to the European Union.
Oh, some of my tax goes to the European Union, so I must ignore the 30,000. Sorry, I must ignore the 10,000 that goes to the British government and focus on the £100 that goes to the European Union. This, by the way, just gives you some idea of the actual size of the bureaucratic bodies involved.
Right, and of that 1%, most of it actually comes back in one form or another, in that you're paying them, and they're giving you the money back in terms of research grants or building opera houses or some sort of shit like that. Right, most of the money is coming straight back, and you're really worried about your taxation of without representation on 1% of the actual tax that you pay.
I would be concerned about it on 0.1%.
At which point you just say, well, you're a fucking idiot then. I mean, there's no other way to say it. I mean, if you're like, yeah, well, I don't really care about the bureaucratic British government wasting, my £10,000, but someone wasted 50 cents in Europe. Anyway,
I would be concerned on any amount. The fact that this is the system.
Bullshit. I mean,
I totally
would. You should
would.
spend 99% of your time worrying about the tax. I mean, have you any idea of the silly things that the UK government spends its money on?
Well, I'm sure they spend their money on plenty of silly things. I don't care.
Right. Now all of a sudden we've gone from I care if they spend 1% to I don't care how the British government spends billions of pounds. Sorry, wastes billions of pounds.
Look, we're not talking about the UK government. No. Hang on. Right. It doesn't matter what the UK government are doing. That's the thing. Even if the UK government is a terrible system, I can force them to do something about it. We can. We as the public can do that. We can't do that to the European Union. So it doesn't make any sense.
So of course that means that if you can do that, then everyone would have just voted for the government not to spend their money on stupid shit. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
And the European Union is on a path to get worse, not better.
It's a convoluted democratic system in England as it is in Europe. Right, but I mean, let me just give you this one, because this one I found hilarious. This is back in the early days of Cameron, that we scrapped the aircraft carriers and ordered some new ones from France. These were going to be, the first thing that England's had that would probably class as a real carrier in a long time, and they were going to fly the F-35 Lightnings off them. But the thing is, the carriers were going to arrive.
Carriers, I think, were 50% built in France.
About 10 years before the planes did, but they'd actually scrapped the Harriers. The only planes that could actually fly off these, they actually scrapped them. So they're going to have the carriers for about 10 years with no planes, and in that gap period there will be no carrier ability for the United Kingdom, right? Well, they can fly helicopters off them, but what's the point of building super carriers to fly helicopters, right? I mean, and you worry about taxation without did you vote for this?
What, did I vote for the EU?
No.
Right, so this whole thing about, well, in Britain we can vote for not spending our money on stupid stuff, and it's like, evidently not, because the government blew crazy sums of money building aircraft carriers where they didn't have any planes they could fly off them. This is completely true, by the way. This actually happened, and this was the entire British Navy. So it beggars belief that something like this happens, but the British military was like, it is vitally important that we have a mobile strike force in the form of a couple of carriers. And so eventually they get the budget for it, and they say, right, here's your money for the carriers. And then they found out they didn't have enough money for the planes. But they'd already sort of budgeted to get rid of the Harriers, so they got rid of the only planes that could fly off the carriers that they said were really important for British security, so they had carriers but no planes.
No. Did you vote for this? For this the way that they spend.
No, but let's imagine.
Do you have any
no.
way of
Okay.
changing it?
Yeah. Okay. Let's imagine
taxation without representation. Do you have any way of changing it?
Yes, actually, I do. I could start. Of course, I do.
No.
Okay, so this is now Sargon had the ability to stop this. Let's find out why he didn't.
Of course I do. I could start a political party. It could be a hot button issue. Millions of people could vote for me. I could storm into the parliament with a majority with this new party, and I could say, right, we have a democratic mandate to introduce laws to reform, to do whatever it is we need to do.
I want to stress that he's talking about something that has already happened.
And we could make it happen. We can't do that with the EU.
And I could go and become the United Kingdom's member of the European Council. I could bring a fantastic argument. We could draft legislation in the European Council. It could be approved by the Parliament, and it would be changed. It's just as accountable.
No, but hang on. That isn't democratic, though. You would have to work your way. You would have to work your way through the avenues of power, and you would not get into the commission based on the vote of the demos. That's the problem. I would get into Parliament on the vote of the demos with that mandate, and you could get to.
Yeah, I want to stress that he's talking about how he could have stopped all this government waste, but didn't, and nor did anyone else, which we'll come to
the European Parliament, and then you could say, hey, look, I'd really like it if you'd write some sort of law or just do any proposal so that we can push this through, and they could just say no.
I mean, look.
Yeah, an interesting comment comes through in the super chats. Sargon of 3%, which is cute because when Sargon did stand for political office, he got 3% of the vote.
Look, let's be real. What you're proposing is just bullshit.
Well, I'm not saying it's likely.
The idea that
I'm not saying it's going to happen.
That you do any of this, right? So in practice, de facto, you can't do it.
No, obviously not. Obviously, there would have to be a great deal of circumstances to make this aircraft carrier hot button issue happen.
Yeah, and it didn't, and it wouldn't ever happen, which basically means, yeah. Ah, good. Someone talks about the F-22 Raptor, the most effective fighter known to mankind. Isn't there something crazy? Like there are almost none of the F-22s. There are. It was super expensive, and it was like too expensive to fail. Yeah, the American government can blow cash in ways that make the British government look like rank amateurs, but they're a much richer country. So yeah. Anyway, yeah, so Brexit, it's not been going so well. Good, we have tank enthusiasts and F-35 Lightnings. Now, from what I've heard about the F-35 Lightning, what was it? It can't climb, can't run, can't turn. But the idea is it's a super sophisticated, stealthy fighter that can sort of fly up and shoot its missiles off and run away. But the thing is that I think in virtually all of the military... The problem that you run into with these things is jack of all trades, master of none. So there is a lot of... there are a lot of pluses for going for a generalized aircraft in the military, in that you don't have to worry about different spare parts for fighters and bombers and all that sort of thing. But the bottom line is a specialized fighter will always whop the arse of a generalized aircraft that sometimes is a fighter. And the thing about the F-35 is they want it to be fighter, bomber, and yeah, maybe just fighter and bomber. Yeah. So, if you're in the F-5 situation where it has to maneuver, yeah, you've messed up your tactics. I don't know. I mean, yeah, refurbish the SR-71. I've got one of those. In fact, hang on. This might go cataclysmically wrong. Yeah, let me see if I can pull me up here for a second. Make me a little bit bigger. And... did someone say SR-71? Now that is an aircraft. So these things were made out of titanium, which, yeah, it got very hot because it traveled very quickly. If you're traveling very quickly, you get compressional heating no matter which way you cut it. So an absolutely amazing aircraft. Someone said something about Mick West. How do I feel about Mick West? He does sterling work. I think he goes way too soft on the UFO nuts. I would just call it like it is. Like, these people are crazy and delusional, and they're looking at birds in the infrared and requesting that the military pay millions of dollars to pay for it. And would I hang out with Mick West? Was that? Oh, JR! How are you doing, dude? When's the next hangout? I'm so sorry. Can I do one this weekend? Maybe I can. You see, a lot of the problem is that it's getting stuff. Okay. Let's do a hangout this weekend. Yeah, okay. I'll write it up tomorrow. We'll see how it goes. And the EU is not democratic. Well, there's democratic and there's democratic. People vote for who they want. The mere fact that Farage became an MEP for like 15 years and he couldn't get elected anywhere else, I think it's democratic. I will see you there, JR. Have you got a Nimrod? I do not have a Nimrod. Do you have any pet animals with you? I do have. Okay, no. Hang on. Again, give me 1 second. So I have the ultimate UFO, which is... So one of my plans at some point is I'm going to start filming it in the infrared. I'm going to get like a fishing rod and sort of swing it around in the infrared, you know, maybe a bit of an out of focus camera, and yeah, the ultimate flying, the unidentified flying object. Yeah. How can it fly with no obvious signs of propulsion and no forms of lift? Yeah. That's actually kind of funky, yeah. My God, the dead eyes! The dead eyes! Oh, yeah. That was always funny, that Leto guy. The trained fighter pilot who couldn't identify a duck. Anyway, right, so I think we're almost done on the Brexit celebrations. How long have we been going? Hour and 20. That's not so bad. And I do actually have some dinosaurs. I've lent my infrared camera to someone though, so I can't do that. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? Yeah, never mind. It's a plane. But this is... How can, like, all of these news agencies show what is clearly a plane, an out-of-focus plane? The blinking is so obvious, and they're sat there saying with a straight face that this is the best evidence for UFOs because it was filmed by US Navy pilots. Oh, Bob Lazar, that guy is a absolute kook. Anyone who claims that we have crashed alien spacecraft hasn't thought this through so much. Obviously so, because anyone who masters interstellar travel has probably managed to master landing as well. Certainly to the point where, yeah, you don't expect to get lots of crashed alien spacecraft. Or if you do get crashed alien spacecraft, you expect them to crash spectacularly. You know, we're sort of the sort of crash where they sort of vaporize a mountain, that sort of thing. So I was actually, someone says the aliens kamikaze on us. That's another video that I've been planning for some time. Is a video about kamikazes. I want to see videos on the analysis of the Ukraine war, what's fake. The thing is, you can't really tell, right? Early on in the Iraq war, it was fairly easy to tell what was real, because people didn't really have any preparation time for it. So it was, large portions of it were real. Now it's basically impossible to there's so much footage from the front line. Anyone can claim almost anything, and you can't tell what's real anymore. But to an extent, you don't have to, because no problem, Miguel. You don't have to tell what's real, because the mere fact that Russia has been fought to a standstill and is talking about halting the Ukrainian offensive, that's it. That's all you need to know. The mere fact that they've been, my personal read on this is, Russia is screwed, and the reason Russia is screwed is because they're locked in a war of attrition with a better equipped adversary, which is basically a countdown to defeat. They are now Japan in World War II. They can fight bravely, they can fight valiantly, they can blah, blah, blah. But the bottom line is, if you're fighting a war against a materially superior enemy, you either have to win quickly or you lose. And Russia was never in the game for winning quickly. Nor were they fighting particularly valiantly, blah, 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 blah. So, hey, Germany, Thunderfoot was Germany, and the resurgence of burning coal is just stupid beyond belief. They should have never decommissioned their nuclear power. They should be building more nuclear power plants. Nuclear is pretty good stuff. But still, the Taliban won against the US. If you want the full story on that, you should watch Rambo 3, which is a absolutely hilarious movie where John Rambo, having defeated the communists in Vietnam, now goes to fight the communists in Afghanistan, where I kid you not, he teams up with the valiant Mujahideen. I think they were called the Taliban, maybe Al-Qaeda, that sort of thing. But no, they team up with the... basically, it's pure propaganda, apart from it is the valiant, godly Mujahideen who are fighting the evil communists. They are the good guys. They're the good guys in Rambo 3. Will you talk about the Titanic submarine? I did have some brief comments on the sub on my other channel, the Voice of Thunder. The thing is, with a sub like that, anything goes wrong. A pinprick. The smallest pinhole leak, and you are on a countdown to dying. And I will explain why. So I do this only because I want to get my drawing board up again. So we want to get rid of that one. No, we want to keep that one. We get rid of that one. There we go. Super. So, as you're breathing, the most important thing about breathing is you have 1 atmosphere of pressure going into your lungs and 1 atmosphere pushing on the outside. If you stick a mask on your face and you put 2 atmospheres of pressure in there, it'll kill you, right? 2 atmospheres on the inside and 1 atmosphere on the outside, it blows you up like a balloon, you die. Likewise, 2 atmospheres on the outside, 1 atmosphere on your lungs, you can't breathe in, right? It's like it's like being constricted by a giant snake. By the way, the tattoo is fake, but it still looks fairly cool. It also looks now a little stonewashed. What with the having washed for a little bit. Anyway, so where are we going? Yeah, the sub. So if you've got a sub, let's try. We'll make our sub a little rounder. There we go. So it turns out the ultra deep sea subs, they all look like this. They're a sphere. The one that everyone died in was tablet shaped, which is rare for these subs. So it actually had a tubular bit and end bits. The end bits were titanium. The bit in the middle was an epoxy composite with carbon fiber, which that's almost certainly what killed everyone. But the thing is that if you have a diving bell, right? Imagine this is a diving bell and it's got a hole in the bottom here and it's sat on the water surface like this. There's 1 atmosphere of air in the diving bell and there is 0 water pressure. So water doesn't go into the diving bell. Now, if you take the diving bell down about 10 meters, so yeah, this is now 10 meters down. 10 meters of air is worth about 1 atmosphere of pressure. So at that point, you've got your hole in the bottom. The water will come up about halfway, and you'll have 2 atmospheres of pressure in the top of the sub, and it'll be half full of water. And if you have that same pinhole in the bottom, and you go down to 10 atmospheres, that's 100 meters. It'll about 9/10 fill. The atmospheric pressure in that little bit of air in the top will be 10 atmospheres. And the sub will be almost entirely full of water. So what you get from this is basically if you have any hole in your submarine whatsoever, and you go down beyond 10 meters, the sub will eventually just fill up with water. And for the sub to float, it needs to have neutral buoyancy. So it's got to have the same average density as water. And once your sub is full of water, it doesn't have neutral buoyancy anymore. It's heavier than water, so it sinks. So the thing is that it is probably the most depressing way to die ever, is to be in a submarine like this, at depth, let's say 1 kilometer down, and you get a pinhole leak. Right? Now, the first thing that you do when you get a pinhole leak is the submarine will have negative buoyancy. It'll have weights tied to it. So the first thing that you do, if you get a pinhole leak, because now water is coming into the sub, and it's slowly leaking in. So the first thing that you do is you cut your buoyancy weights, and hopefully that gives you buoyancy to go back up to the surface. But these things don't go up and down that quick. It takes them like 2 or 3 hours to go up and down. And the thing is that if that leak is enough, if that leak fills up your sub enough, during that time, you lose your lift buoyancy and you start sinking again. And the second you start sinking again, the fill rate increases and the pressure in the gas, the pressure here just goes up and up and up. And once it gets to about 10 atmospheres, your bodies can't handle the gases in all sorts of ways. So for the deep sea divers, they breathe mostly a buffer gas for the pressure, which is helium or some shit, and you have some little bit of oxygen in there, which keeps you alive. Thank you, whoever loves Drunk Thunderfoot. Yeah, it's a good day for celebrating freedom. But it looks like what probably happened is they went down a couple of kilometers or something, and what probably happened is carbon fiber. Carbon fiber kind of looks like cloth. There's lots of fibers like this. There's lots of fibers like this. It's all interwoven. It's very strong, but it's very strong in tension. That is, if I pull it this way, and I pull it this way, and the fibers are in tension, the fibers are being pulled, it's very strong. In compression, I thought carbon fiber was crap, which is why I was kind of surprised. So quite often materials are either good in compression or good in tension. composite materials are a sort of attempt to get both. So steel is the classic. Steel is strong in tension, which is it's good for making cables, but it's lousy in compression. You push it and it just tends to crumple up and fold, and it's no good. Bricks are exactly the opposite. Bricks are fantastic in compression, right? Which is why you build buildings out of them. They're very good in compression. They don't bend or deform or anything like that. But they're not very good in tension, which is why when you sort of have a brick, it's in compression in the bottom and in tension on the top. That's when the bricks crack. Bricks crack because they're not very good like this. And yeah, so the composite materials is usually one that's good in compression, one that's good in tension. So the classic is you put steel into concrete, steel reinforced concrete, and you sort of get the best of both worlds in the composite material. But the composites with carbon fiber, I know they're very good for making high pressure cylinders, but high pressure cylinders, that's high pressure cylinders is where you're pumping lots of air into the middle, and so these things are they're being stretched from the inside. They're not being compressed. So like that, I thought the composites were quite good, but when it's being compressed from the outside, I don't know. But what probably happened, what probably killed the guys in the sub, is when you go down to depth, you get a lot of compression on the hull. When I say compression, I should stress sea depths. Remember what I was saying about 10 meters is 1 atmosphere. So a kilometer, so this is now going to be 10 meters. A kilometer is 100 atmospheres. 100 atmospheres? 1,000. I'm a bit fuzzy on the maths at the moment, but yeah, no, that's right. 10, yeah. So it's 100 atmospheres is 1 kilometer, and so 10 kilometers is 1,000 atmospheres, and they were down at about half of that. So it's about 500 atmospheres, which is a stupid amount of pressure down on the seabed. No problem on my one black friend. And I forget where I was going with this now. Yeah, I remember exactly now. So when you're down to the seabed at about 10 kilometers and you're at 1,000 atmospheres, the actual compression, people say liquids aren't compressible. Not true. Once you get down to 1,000 atmospheres, the rough compressibility of your liquids is about 1%. So the liquids are really stiff springs. But once you get down to these huge depths, there is actually about a 1% compression on these things due to the pressure. And if you've actually got a composite material that is like some sort of cloth of really fibers that are very strong but maybe not so good at being squeezed, and epoxy, as you repeatedly sort of squeeze and unsqueeze these things by 1%, the forces are bloody stupid, I should add. The actual amount that you're compressing the liquid is only 1%, but you need 1,000 atmospheres of pressure to do this. It's stupid pressures. So, I mean, first of all, that's also why when you get a failure of any sort on these things, it's like instant death, because this is a very stiff spring that, and all of a sudden you're letting the pressure off, the spring just comes out and it's very rapid. And someone sends me a super chat saying, "You used to buy into the Mask Genius narrative, and now I don't, which is awesome. Yeah. And yeah. 5 years, and yeah, then I think actually maybe that's his out. Maybe his out is his fight with Zuckerberg, and then maybe they should put all of their wealth on the I don't know. But billionaire deathmatch. Who am I rooting for? I don't care as long as there's blood on the dance floor. And I think there's one thing that annoys me. Oh yeah, God. I mean, the Americans who support the monarchy. We now have king. I still can't get over that. So that was the one thing that was a little sad, was when Queen Elizabeth died, that really did feel like the end of a generation, because the end of 4 generations, because she had been an absolute fixture in the UK, had no real power, but yeah, I mean, it does kind of highlight now that the monarchy doesn't really serve that much of a purpose. Anyway, let's see. Thanks for the muskrats. Yeah, 1,000 atmospheres in a pinhole is water jet territory. That's exactly right. The force that you would get out of a water jet at 1,000 atmospheres would sort of cut through flesh like nothing. Practical upshot is, if you did have a pinhole in your sub, you can't block it. There is literally no way you can apply the force to stop a pinhole leak. So if you have a pinhole leak is the worst way to go, because as you're going up, your sub is flooding, and if you don't keep neutral buoyancy, you can't pump the water out because you need too much pressure to pump it out, and eventually you sink down, and the submarine, the air is squeezed into the top of the submarine, and you have your entire sub, the air of your entire sub is compressed into like a cubic centimeter of 1,000 atmosphere air, and yeah, you're screwed. In fact, it's an interesting thing that, yeah, the reason the Titanic died sank was because they basically ignored all the safety regulations and just went ahead and did it anyway, which is almost exactly the reason that this sub, yeah, there's all this video footage of him doing the Musk stuff about we're moving fast and breaking things, they said it wasn't possible, but we just did it anyway. And yeah, that doesn't always work out. Although you've got to give it to the CEO of the company. He had skin in the game. He was in the sub when it went down. So he believed. And he had good reason to believe. He had been down in the sub himself to depth, I think, 2 or 3 times before. So yeah, but I can't say it holds a lot of charm for me, the idea of going and seeing a sub on the seafloor. It's, yeah. Did Elon ever catch his stalker? I'm not entirely sure there ever was one, or if there was, maybe it was. I don't know. When things vanish like that, I just don't trust them. Someone says something about airplanes and composites. Let's see what comes through on the. I'm too much of a boomer to deal with this stuff. Airplane high pressure oxygen bottles come in both steel and composite. Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at. But their intention, right? They're being squeezed from the outside, so they're actually in tension. Steel is good in tension, and for certain, the carbon fiber is fantastic in compression. In tension, but you know, when it's being stretched, but it's not. It's obviously porous, so that's what the epoxy does. So that's why it's good for. I'm surprised they do oxygen bottles in composite though, and the main reason for that is composites are usually epoxies, which are flammable, and you never put high pressure oxygen near flammable stuff. That's a bad idea. Also heard that at pressure, the incoming water would rapidly erode the hole, make it much bigger. This is certainly true. But I don't know what the rates are like on that, and that'll depend greatly. The sub itself was, the walls were 5 inches thick. That's like 10 centimeters or something, if I've got my numbers right. So I think there were bloody thick walls on this thing. But yeah, apparently the bang that they heard on the military sonar. What that mostly is it's the water, when it goes in, it accelerates, and when it stops, that's when it makes the bang. It's a water hammer effect. So yeah, to get the water hammer thing, which makes a real bang, that's what they'll have heard on the sonar. Are there current differences on what would have happened to their bodies? Their bodies are made up of water, so they would have got 1% smaller, roughly, from the compression of the depth. All the gas in their lungs would have been instantly squeezed. The thing that's most a problem is the water will come in. We were discussing this earlier, right? So sound waves are the thing that determines the propagation of sound waves is basically how fast molecules bump into each other, which is the speed of sound in air, which for most gas molecules is about the speed of sound, 300 kilometers per second, that sort of 300 meters per second, that sort of thing. Speed of sound in a liquid or a solid is about 10 times faster because the molecules are much faster. They sort of bump into each other much quicker. It's like, you know, when you break the billiards at the beginning, that's very much more like what this is. So the speed that those all bump into each other is about 10 times faster. And that's roughly the speed that the water would have gone into the sub, which is, yeah, I mean, you're talking faster than the speed of sound, and it's got the density of water. It would just go straight through anything that it hits. Yeah, people are effectively liquid at that those sorts of forces. The nearest analogy that I can think of, which is ugly, is ballistic gel, right? So there are all these people who do these, when they're testing munitions, they shoot basically jelly people. And you know, when you see the bullets go through them, you see the cavitations that they create and the such like. But basically that's what people are at these sorts of forces. They're jelly. So they would have had, well, they wouldn't have known what the hell was going on. There would just been a that was it, bum. And thanks for the entertainment and education over the years. No problem, Sebastian. Happy to have helped. And thank you, Banek, for all the love from the Netherlands. And yeah, happy Independence Day to Silent Echoes. And let's see if what else we got in the way of. And thank you, Nikos from Greece. So I think that, yeah, I've drifted a little from Brexit, from one disaster to another. Although it is an interesting thing that, you know, the amount of money that was spent trying to save 5 people, because I think it's mostly because there was a ticking clock here. If there wasn't the ticking clock, why did they spend so much money trying to save 5 people? Yeah, there were like planes flying that would cost, you know, $1 million a flight. There were boats sailing that would cost that sort of amount per day. And Yeah, this went on for a week. They're spending tens of millions of dollars, trying to rescue a sub where they basically cut all the corners, and then kind of boasted about cutting all the corners to do this sort of thing. But I saw one of these. It was a guy saying that boats of this sort of size, they cost $1 million a day to run, and the subs, this thing where the subs, they were charging $250,000 per person to go down to the Titanic, was actually done on the super cheap. It really was the absolute cheapest you could have done it. Yeah. And Super Chat comes in with Picard. Pat in the chat. Then if you cover this, the thoughts on Dr. Tor and Dave Caruffle? I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know these two. Anyway, I think Game of Thrones award this year. Cameron claims seeing you. Yeah, Cameron claims that he talked to guys who had heard they'd heard the implosion. So that was that. Happy Independence Day from Romania. Actually, that's one of the ones that I remember going way back. Sargon's sidekick at the time was from Romania, and his big argument for leaving was, I had this discussion with them the day after where it was like, okay, fine, you won, you're on your own now, you've got no one else to blame if it all goes tits up. Guess what happened? But his big argument was, I am Weird Al in disco tonight. Anyway, his big argument for leaving the EU was that they had become Nazis over light bulbs or something like that, and that you couldn't buy incandescent light bulbs because of European Union rules, and that they hurt his eyes or some shit. And this was just, it was stupid on every conceivable level. And that, first of all, I knew this because I'd measured the spectra of all of these light bulbs, and of all of the light bulbs, the LEDs are by far the best. Right? If you're talking about continuous light for the eyes, LEDs win supreme. The only thing that they really suck for is when they use them for street lighting, because you cannot filter them out using when you're doing astronomy with the sodium streetlights, they only put off a very narrow band of light in the orange, like this, which you can filter out with a blue piece of glass like this, and that works fantastically. But the second that you're into broadband light for streetlights, fantastic for how well it lights things up. For astronomy, it's the kiss of death. You cannot filter it out, which sucks. Donkey balls. So it's one of the things that I absolutely hate about going back to the UK now, is when I was a kid, it was all sodium streetlights. So I could actually do a decent astronomy, even though there was quite a lot of light pollution. Now, the light pollution, can't filter it out. It's gone forever. And we get a couple more super chats come in saying, thanks for being green and happy and you, and thank you, Jason, much appreciated. And also Endemna, maybe. I'm not so good with the names. But anyway, yeah, so the other thing that he was calamitously wrong with is that you couldn't buy the incandescent light bulbs. I mean, the incandescent light bulbs are literally 10 times less energy efficient. I have use for them, right? So I'd actually, the thing he was saying that you couldn't buy in Europe anymore, I'd actually bought from the local supermarket in Europe the week before. And this was his argument for leaving the European Union. And I used them because the incandescents, they put up a lot of light in the infrared. And there were times when I actually need the broadband infrared stuff. So Cheers to you too, Digger. The only one, right, someone also says Chinese LEDs are great. This is true. Although I should stress, the one thing that you have to avoid these, because those things, the ultra cheap ones, they pulse at 50 hertz. And those things give you I get a headache just from looking at them for like a couple of seconds. And if you film them with either just a regular cell phone camera on whatever the slow-mo is on those, you can see them turning on and off, and they're a nightmare. But you get the continuous power on the LEDs. They're fantastic. Someone asked a question about Virgin Galactic. Virgin Orbital went bust recently. And they had a sort of sensible business model. YouTube not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. Okay, this might all go south very quickly. We'll see how this goes. Virgin Galactic, they fly you up to the edge of space and you come straight back down, which is not too bad, but that requires about 1/100th of the energy to go into orbit. Now, the nice thing about Virgin Orbital, what they were doing is they were launching small satellites. So there's actually quite a lot of market in launching small satellites. In fact, most of the market is launching really small satellites to specific orbits. So this thing about the Falcon 9 being the cheapest per kilo is a bit of a red herring. All you really care about is how much will it cost to launch my satellite? And Virgin Orbital, they had their plane and they would drop the rocket from under the plane and it flies up into a specific orbit. And it had potential, but they just ran out of money. And even though in principle it made any place on Earth a potential place to launch a smallish satellite, there just wasn't a market for it. And yeah, with SpaceX, I'll bet dollars to donuts when the dust settles on SpaceX that it turns out that they were always basically subsidized by NASA and they were never really any more effective than anyone else. Gary says, thanks for the content. No problem. Glad you enjoy the content, Jerry. Yeah, someone appreciates it's like looking back in time 30 years, which is exactly what it's like. I'm thinking what it is. It's Video Kill the Radio Star. I am Video Kill the Radio Star. Spoilers, the truth might just be that it's been a long day, and I'm not so sure I take white light so well at this point, but also I kind of like the disco look. So, and someone says, hey, am I banned already? No, you're not banned already. Branson spent all his money. Hyperloop, if you've not seen, so Virgin Hyperloop now has become... it's Virgin Hyperloop 1 has now become Hyperloop 1. In other words, they ditched the Virgin thing. They're pulled out of it completely. So it was literally, it went in the first 6 months, it went to, we're focusing on cargo and we're not going to do... Let me scroll that back. The first 6 months is like, we've had our first passengers ride on a Hyperloop. This is the future. Everyone should be really excited about this. 6 months later, it's like we're scrapping the whole passenger Hyperloop thing and we're focusing on cargo. And 6 months after that, it's like, actually just take our name off the Hyperloop thing altogether. And if you now check out the Virgin Hyperloop, if you now check out Hyperloop 1, their webpage, let me just check this. I think it says website unavailable or website coming or something. Let me just check this out. Hyperloop 1. Yeah, it still says our new website is coming soon. That's all it says. So I ought to take a little victory lap on that one, actually. So there was a video I had up I think it's only 2 years ago, where my prediction was 7 years to the complete end of the Hyperloop. And it wasn't 7 years, it was only 2. So, yeah. Hyperloop 1, they're the most sophisticated by a long way. So this is one of the things that I had planned for this year, is I wanted to go see both of the Hyperloops, the Hyperloop track. So you have the Hyperloop 1 track, or Virgin Hyperloop 1, which now has the dead website, and I'm going to guess it's derelict out in the desert. That's the one outside Las Vegas. And what was the other one? The other one was the Elon Musk Hyperloop, which has now been cut in half to make way for a train track. And I want to get some video of that before it goes completely, because it's funny. The more so, seeing as, you know, over the various years, I've come up with... There is always someone who is a fanatical pushback against all of these things. So back in the Solar Roadways days, there was someone who was absolutely adamant that glass was a fantastic material to make roads out of, and he had gone and talked to some university professor who said this was possible, therefore it was university professor versus whatever scientist sort of thing. Therefore, it was all, yeah, one says yes and one says no. And it's like, no. The thing is that glass scratches really easy with the hard stuff that you get in the environment, like little pebbles, rocks, that sort of thing. It was never going to be a good material to make roads out of. But yeah, this guy followed me around for a long time, claiming that. Yeah, I just Solar Roads, they were really... I also want to go back and see Solar Roadways, see how that's aged over the years, because that's also likely to be funny. Backyard Chemist, composite bottles of thin metal liners. Okay, this makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. So the same sort of deal as sweet corn. Sweet corn is the cans are coated on the inside with a thin film of some sort of plastic. I would like to say chlorinate PTFE, but that sounds way too expensive to line a sweet corn can with. Anyway. Yeah, actually, there's a solar road in Europe somewhere I ought to go take a look at. But I checked it out on Google Earth, and it was like 2 years old. Actually, okay, it's maybe 5 years old, but the thing had almost entirely rotted away. Yeah, spin launch is another one, right? So in principle, spin launch is, well, again, it's an old idea, but they built some huge, expensive prototype. And yeah, it's got some real engineering in it, but yeah, it's when you actually take a look at how long it takes to spin up, how the forces involved, the timings involved, the size of the vacuum chamber you got to pump down, and also the actual prototype that they built. No. They would have been better off just going for the giant, you know, we'll buy one of the old battleships, weld two of the guns together, which is more or less what the last sort of shooting shells into space thing was. And they did okay. But yeah, spin launch, no. Okay, so I think I might call it quits at that, especially since I have rambled on lots of things that weren't Brexit. Yeah, because reasons. But let's see. Yeah, what's next for Brexit? I'll tell you where the end. I'll tell you where this ends, and it ends at almost exactly the same place that it started. In fact, let me. The thing is, and this is actually in the debate that I had with Sargon somewhere. I didn't have too much time to do lots of preparation for this, but there's this one bit where I basically describe this scene in Red Dwarf where they're repainting the ship from ocean grey to military grey, and it's exactly the same colour. You cannot tell the difference between them. They're operationally insignificant in terms of the difference, and that's basically where Brexit will end up. That, you know, they started off with a trade deal with the European Union, where obviously trade goes on geography. You typically trade with your nearest neighbours. You would see this in the British trading figures, in that 50% of the trade goes to Europe, rich people or richish folk who are nearby. You were never going to replace this with trade deals with Australia, which is on the other side of the world and has 20 million people, versus the European Union, which is 500 million and is right on your doorstep. So inevitably, it is the more efficient arrangement to be part of a trading agreement with Europe, and if you're selling into the market, you basically have to follow their rules anyway. So Britain will be manufacturers, as far as they're concerned, they're going to be rule takers. Well, let me rephrase that. If they want to make products for a market, that's the way it goes. Right? You have to follow the rules of the market you're selling into, this was another one of these vapid Brexit selling points. And cheers to you too, Clay Carter. So yeah, eventually where it'll end up is where it was before Brexit. There will be some sort of seamless trading arrangement which will be effectively rejoining the European Union. Although where Britain was before, at least it could have says in how the rules were made and all that sort of thing. You're not going to get that without actually fully rejoining. And if Britain actually said at the moment, we want to rejoin the European Union, I'm pretty sure it would be like, we kind of tried this before and it didn't work out. You know, why should we take you back? It was more trouble than it's worth. I mean, for certain, the macroscopic numbers were, it was something like 15% of the British economy was trade that went to Europe, and an almost exactly same amount came back from Europe to the UK. So there was roughly parity of trade, but that was 15% of the British economy, and it was like 2% of the European economy. It was a tiny fraction of the European economy. For them, this can be lost in the noise. For the UK, it can't. It's big enough that you can't lose it in the noise. And yeah, a calamitous act of national self-harm. You could see it coming a mile off. I mean, I'm amazed that I go back and I watch the videos from 7 years ago, and the arguments are exactly the same. I mean, nothing has changed in my opinions of any of this since. It was dumb then, and it's dumb now. Anyway, I'm not so sure it's quite as far as fuck the UK, but it was so stupid. It was a national act of self-harm. Patriotic suicide. That's a good one. I like that. Deathexian. It was patriotic suicide. And you can see it in people like Farage, this sort of chest beating about this will be our Independence Day. They're sort of channeling Churchill, which, you know, again, once you actually get into the history, maybe history has been kind to Churchill because he won, but he was certainly a military adventurer. But yeah, okay, that's definitely where they were going. But you can't run an economy on patriotic chest beating. You can't run your economy on believing in Britain. Otherwise, Boris Johnson would have been the greatest thing for Britain ever. Didn't quite work out that way. Yeah, so the interesting thing about Churchill is he was ditched immediately after World War II, because whilst people sort of, he was kind of the right man for the hour, but after that, we want to build something back better. And that was basically the birth of the National Health Service. And it was done by basically kicking out all the people who had been in power, like Churchill, during World War II. It's a fairly interesting history. Anyway, so I think I will call it quits there. Thank you very much for turning up to celebrate Independence Day with me. I'm not so sure we need to do another one of these. It's going to be a slow train wreck for the next 5 years. I mean, the last 7 was not a slow train wreck, but it was definitely a continuous train wreck. It's going to be more of the same. Okay, I love you all. Thank you so much for turning up, and I will see you next time.